right, little bonus segments. Let's talk about some of these rule changes that WWE has been supposedly making over the last couple of days. Anyway, welcome to Three Count Commentaries. This is your boy Mongo Slade. So there's been two different rule changes that supposedly came out of, well, right before SmackDown. One was WWE banning thigh slaps from kicks and I'm guessing knee lifts and everything of that kind. Probably Drew McIntyre's headbutt and all that stuff too. And then they said no hiring over 30s for developmental, which is age discrimination. But I don't care. So let's talk about the thigh slaps first. So I hate thigh slapping. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Especially when I hate it when it's done very phony. It makes everything sound phony. Especially when you kick somebody in the stomach and they go. It's like, that's not how the sound a kick makes. You know, like it makes that sound in UFC because they're barefoot. Like if you were barefoot, then thigh slapping would make sense. It would be like the sound of your skin slapping their skin. But in wrestling, you're wearing boots. So why would it sound like that? You know? And then even if that's the case, we can say, it's gotten too much. Maybe this ought to tell people to stop throwing so many kicks. Right? Because there is an excessive amount of super kicks, an excessive amount of thigh slapping. Like I've even seen Johnny Gargano thigh slap with a chop, right? Like he would chop somebody and slap his thigh at the same time. I've seen him do that, like enough. I know Adam Cole and Johnny Gargano, they're probably going to be doing it anyway, and then they're going to turn around and say the rule doesn't apply to NXT, or it wasn't really a rule anyway. I'm just talking about things that have been tossed out there on the internet. I can always say, especially if it comes from the wrestling internet, it's probably not real. But just in case it is real, it makes sense for it to be the case, okay? Because I hate thigh slapping. I think it's completely unnecessary. I think if you want to make contact and want it to make a sound, you need to find an inventive and creative way to do it. Because you can, people have like been posting pictures of guys slapping their thighs. You know, even Apollo Crews was slapping his thigh during a moonsault. We don't need so much thigh slapping. We really don't need it. It's trash. Now let's move on to the second thing. WWE supposedly, Vince McMahon supposedly says that he's not going to be signing anybody over the age of 30 to a developmental contract, which makes sense. Now this is age discrimination, but let's talk about that real quick, because look at the wording. They won't be signing them to developmental contracts. That doesn't mean that they won't be signing them, just that they won't be signing them to developmental contracts. So they may sign them to do other things or sign them for other reasons. They just won't go through NXT, right? Now, this, of course, comes after a lot of people noticed the huge influx of talent that was brought up from the Performance Center. And you had several people, Anthony Henry, Taya Valkyrie, LA Knight. A lot of these people were not only over the age of 30, they were over the age of 35. You know, like Taya is closer to 40, and Anthony Henry is close to 40. And look, I get it. We have been saying for a long time now that WWE has had this problem with signing people who are getting old, you know. And, I think Keith Lee was like over 30 when they signed him, you know. So was Damian Priest. He was over 30 when they signed him. Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes you bring a guy in and he really didn't get good until 33 or 34 years old, which is usually the case anyway. That's really like the prime years for a wrestler. But what you're saying is we're not going to be signing these people to developmental deals. In other words, we're probably going to bring them straight into Raw or SmackDown. And maybe they go to NXT or whatever other show to get their WWE experience. But we're not going to sign them to developmental contracts. Now, that's the first thing I saw, of course, was people saying that this is age discrimination. The same people who say that, you know, Edge shouldn't be in the main event of WrestleMania because he's old, or that the people in the Elimination Chamber were too old. The same people who were complaining about all that stuff when they came out with this rule started saying like, "Oh no, that's age discrimination. You can't do that." And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure Again, this is something that has been thrown out on the internet. There is no guarantee. There's always going to be a mixture of veterans and young talent when they do these hirings. They need to, have a hiring freeze, if we're being honest. But it's always going to be a mixture of young talent and older talent, because you never know which 34-year-old is actually pretty good and which ones are the shits. Just because you've been in the business for 20 years doesn't mean that you're good at it, right? Just because you've been in the business for 10 years doesn't mean that you're good at it. Just because you've only been in the business 3 years doesn't mean that you're bad. So they're going to make individual decisions. But what they're saying is, generally, we're not looking at anybody over the age of 30 for a developmental deal, because you should already be developed if you're over 30. But the problem, and I've seen a lot of people say this, is that, these people have never worked TV before. So you have a lot of people on the independents who never worked TV. They don't know anything about timing. They don't know anything about cameras. They don't know anything. And that's some really important stuff. Like, I literally just, I believe it was Jim Cornette, or was it Al Snow? Somebody talking about OVW and how they focused on timing. That, hitting time cues, knowing when to end your match, because, you're stealing time from the main event guys if you go over, so, and you also have commercial breaks and stuff like that. Some people have never worked and there was a commercial break necessary, right? That, what to do during a commercial, this is where you usually get people who just do like wild shit during the commercial and nobody sees it. It's like, you have to know how to work around the different constraints and work with the referees and that type of stuff. That's all going to all have to come with time, So you're going to have to ask the question, like, what happens if you sign somebody who is over the age of 30 and they actually are really good, or they have a good reputation? Then what are you going to do? Right? Then I would say that what they would do is they would probably sign them to a regular contract. There's ways around this whole age discrimination thing, right? They could put that out there and it could probably not be true. But let's say that it is. Then I think that what they would do is they would skirt around this by having different kinds of contracts, where there are certain people who are experienced. And just because you've been in the business 10 years doesn't mean you're any good. And so I would guess, like, if you're not that good and you're 38, you're probably not going to get signed. But if you are decent to good, I have no reason to believe that if James Storm or somebody like that showed up and they looked at him and said, "Oh well, you're 42 or 41 or whatever, we're not going to sign you." I have no reason to believe that. What I do believe is that they probably would say, "All right, probably not going to put you in NXT. Then we probably just bring you straight to Raw or SmackDown, and then you'll debut on Raw or SmackDown, and you do supplemental stuff down in NXT, where you'll go to the Performance Center and learn things like, proper timing, WWE timing, how to work commercials and how to work WWE style and stuff like that. That's stuff you have to learn on the job. But it's different from developmental. Developmental is, actually going to class and all that type of stuff. The mirrors and the promo class and, where everybody's watching you all the time. That's probably what they mean. But this, of course, is all just rumors and speculation because we don't know. But I'm okay with both of the rules because these are two things that I hate anyway. I hate that WWE spends so much time signing people who are over the age of 30. I would have said 35 personally. I think a 31-year-old or a 32-year-old should be perfectly fine. 30 is that's a little too young. So I would have said personally, nobody over the age of 35. But obviously, you're going to make exceptions for certain people, certain talents. Nobody's going to be like, "Hey, we got this opportunity to sign this really dope talent, but he's 36 and he's like a big star on the independents." You're not going to be like, "Nah, we're not going to sign this guy." You'd probably be like, "Look, this is going to have him skip NXT, bring him straight to Raw or SmackDown, and then we just, work him back in. Because I remember when guys would be signed to NXT, they would still work Evolve, right? You could do that with the main roster. You bring a guy up to SmackDown, he still works NXT house shows or NXT matches and stuff like that just to get the timing and different things like that. You could still do that, because they've already set the precedent that it can happen. Now, the Boogeyman was one famous incident where, they told him hey, you have to be 30 or whatever to be on Tough Enough, and he was 35. And when they found out, they fired him. Technically, they couldn't fire him for being too old. They fired him for lying. So, even though I think the Boogeyman is still under contract, he is one of those guys where they keep tabs on him for some reason. Probably because Shane McMahon really liked the Boogeyman gimmick. So I'm okay with both of the rules. I hate thigh slapping, and we need to focus on the younger talent as far as NXT is concerned. Not so much about Raw and SmackDown. I really don't care how old you are as long as you can go. But I'm all right with both of these rules. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Hashtag 3Count commentaries to support the channel. If you want to send cash, please, and you should want to send cash, then please do so in the Cash App. Thank you guys for your time, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah. Yeah.